very good day to all of you and welcome back to Ruben Sir's classes. And today I'm going to teach you for the 12th standard students. This particular poem is for the 12th standard students, A Roadside Stand by Robert Frost. I think already this lesson has been taught to you in school, but again I would like to explain once more to you since you are appearing for the board examination. And if you would watch this video very carefully, I think you would get more understanding, or you would understand better by listening to the explanation of this particular poem. It's a very lengthy poem of 51 lines, and it's a little bit of a difficult poem to understand. But if you pay proper attention, I think you will be very easily, you'll be able to understand the explanation. Now, before I could go further, let me tell you the poetic devices that have been used in this poem. The poetic devices, as I always told you, are very important when you are studying a poem, because it can be asked for the board examination when they give you one particular stanza and they would ask you, what is the poetic device used in this particular line, or what is the poetic device used in this stanza? So you should be aware of the poetic devices, and that is the reason why I am giving you the poetic devices first before I could start the poem. So now I would say that the poetic devices that are used here, number one, personification. Now, personification is a very easy poetic device which every one of you hopefully knows what personification is. When does a thing become personified? Personification is a poetic device when a non-living thing is given, it is given as if it is a living thing. The characters given to a non-living thing seems to be similar to the characters of a living thing. That is what personification is about. So here, the first one is personification, and the line in this poem, the personification one is a roadside stand that pathetically pled. It's almost in the beginning of the poem. That is a personification. Now, plead is to beg. So, pleading, begging, requesting. Now, a roadside stand cannot request. It cannot request anyone. But here, the poet has given the dimensions of the characters of a living thing. That is why it's called a personification. It says that a roadside stand that pathetically pled. Then the second one is selfish cars. Now, cars cannot be selfish. Cars are non-living things and they cannot have the character of being selfish. But the poet has used this word, selfish cars. So that is why I am saying that these two are personification. The second one is transferred epithet. Now, what is a transferred epithet? A poetic device where an adjective usually used to describe one thing is transferred to an other. It's usually an adjective together with a noun. The qualities of the adjective is transferred to the noun. That is called transferred epithet. Now, for example, when I say hot coffee, now coffee is a noun, hot is an adjective. Now this hot is being transferred to the coffee. The coffee becomes hot. So it is transferred from one thing to an other. And that is why it is called a transferred epithet. So the transferred epithet used in this poem is polished cars. See, polished cars. Now in this poem, polished cars does not mean the cars that had been polished and is shining. It's not the meaning of that. It means that the rich people who are traveling in these cars, the rich people in society, the higher class people in society traveling in these cars, the poet is calling those cars polished cars. So the next poetic device that is used here is transferred epithet, polished cars. And once again, I'm telling you what is a transferred epithet. A poetic device where an adjective is usually used to describe one thing which is transferred to an other. An adjective to a noun. That is called a transferred epithet. So the transferred epithet used in this poem is polished cars. So that is the transferred epithet. The next one is metaphor. Trusting sorrow. You know what is a metaphor? It is an implied simile. The only thing is that they will not be words like as and like. It is almost same as a simile because it is a comparison. It is a comparison between two things, but the word as and like will not be there, and the metaphor almost symbolizes, it gives a symbol also. So your word used here is trusting sorrow. That is the metaphor. And the next one is oxymoron. Now what is an oxymoron? An oxymoron is when it is when contradictory, opposite terms. Contradictory means opposite terms. When two opposite terms are used together, two terms are used together which are quite opposite in their meaning. That is why it is called an oxymoron. So oxymoron means when contradictory terms appear in conjunction. Conjunction means together, when they are joined together. So that is the meaning of saying oxymoron. So once again I would repeat it. Oxymoron is when two contradictory words, two words that are opposite to each other, they are in conjunction, they are together. So that is called oxymoron. So the oxymoron used in this poem is greedy good doers. Now see, greedy good doers. Good doers can never be greedy. They can never be greedy. They would always be kind because they are doing good to others. But the poet has used greedy good doers. Greedy is opposite to good doers. And that is why it is a oxymoron. And another one also he has used beneficent beast. Beast means animals. Beneficent beast. So that is also an oxymoron. So the poetic devices that the poet uses here are personification, a roadside stand that pathetically pled. And the second one is transferred epithet, which is polished cars. Then the next one is metaphor, trusting sorrow, and oxymoron. There are two oxymorons used, greedy good doers, beneficent beast. And these are the poetic devices. Now I hope you understood these poetic devices. And now I'm going to start the poem called A Roadside Stand by Robert Frost. Now, usually in my classes, whenever I teach my classes, I tell my students that when you write an answer, if it is more than 5 marks, for a 2-mark answer or a 3-mark answer, you don't have to write anything much about the author or the poet. But if you are writing for a 6-mark question, you know the pattern of your question paper. The last 2 questions are of 6 marks. So when you are writing the question answers for a 6-mark question, then you should always, in the first paragraph, mention something about the author or something about the poet. So now I'm going to tell you about Robert Frost, and I hope you would remember these terms or you would remember these points that I'm telling you about Robert Frost. Now, Robert Frost was a very famous poet of the 20th century. Robert Frost belonged to the 20th century and he was a very famous poet. His main themes, see the main themes of his poem are characters, people and landscape. These are the main themes he always uses. Because Robert Frost, in most of his poems, you can see, he sympathizes with many people. He has a lot of sympathy towards the poor. He loves to write about landscapes, about nature. He loves to write about them. So Robert Frost's themes usually deal with characters of people and landscapes. Now in the poem, A Roadside Stand, Frost, what does he present? He presents the life of poor and deprived rural people with the deepest sympathy and humanity. So these are the points that you have to remember about Robert Frost. Now, Robert Frost is a very famous American poet. And actually, there is another point also about Robert Frost. He was a very famous poet, but he did not become famous in his country. He was from America, but none of the publishers in America accepted his poems. So he came to England, and his poem was first published in England and later on published in America, and he became a very famous poet. So Robert Frost is a very famous American poet of the 20th century. Point number one. Now, what is point number two? His main themes. The main themes of his poem are characters, people, and landscape. That are his main themes. And in this poem, Robert Frost, he presents. What does he present? He presents the lives of the poor and deprived people, of the rural people, of the village, of the countryside. See, when we say country, when we use country in poem, it doesn't mean another country. Countryside in English means villages. So here in this poem, he is presenting a very sad image. The lives of poor and deprived rural people with the deepest sympathy and humanity. So that is about Robert Frost. Now let us come another very important question that can be asked in poems is, what is the central idea of the poem? Now see, they can ask you in different ways. You have to be alert. You must not get confused with the words they ask you. They can ask you different ways. They can ask you, what is the central idea of the poem? What is the theme of the poem? What is the essence of the poem? What is the message of the poem? All this means the same. There is no difference in it. So let's now study the central idea of this poem. Now, in this poem, the poet conveys the distrust of people living in the city, distrust of the people, the villagers, they distrust towards the people who are living in the cities and who do not have any compassion with the rural people and are very selfish. That is the central idea, the first part of the central idea, the first point of the central idea. In this poem, the poet conveys that the people of the rural area, they do not trust the people who are living in the cities. And because the reason they do not trust them is only because they do not have compassion with the rural people and they are considered to be very selfish. Now, Frost wants all human beings to cultivate the value of fellow feeling and empathy. That is what he wants in the poem. That is the message he is trying to pass in the poem. So, Frost, what does he want? He wants that all human beings to cultivate the value of fellow feeling and empathy. The economic well-being of a country. Okay, that is what? The economic well-being of a country depends on the balanced development of villages and cities. A country cannot simply develop because of its cities. It can only economically develop balancing the villages, the rural area, as well as the cities. So this is the central idea of the poem. Now once again, I would repeat the central idea of the poem. In this poem, the poet conveys the distrust of the people that are living in the villages. They do not trust the people who live in big cities. The main reason why they do not trust them is because they feel that the people living in the cities do not have any compassion and with the rural people, and they are very selfish. Now, what does Frost want of us? Frost wants that all human beings to cultivate the value of fellow feeling, to love one another, to have empathy on each other. That is what he wants, to cultivate a habit of fellow feeling. And the next important point is, what he wants to show is that the economic development of a country does not only depend on the cities. It depends on a balanced development of villages and cities. So this is what the central idea of the poem is. Now I hope you understood the poetic devices and you understood the central idea of the poem, and also you memorized few points about Robert Frost. Now I'm going to start the poem, and all of you, I would give you a bit of advice. If you're watching this particular lesson, if you're watching this program on the YouTube, please, before you could watch, keep your textbooks in front of you, because there are two important things I would like to tell you that it would be easy for you to memorize. The first thing is, when the teacher is reading the lesson or whether he is reading the poem, the student has to silently read the lines together with the teacher. And once the teacher is teaching, the student has to keep an eye contact with the teacher. If you do these two things, you will surely be able to learn and pick up faster and understand better. So I would advise you, please take your textbooks and keep it in front of you. I'm going to start the poem, A Roadside Stand. Now I'm going to read the poem and explain to you the paraphrase. The little old house was out with a little new shed in front at the edge of the road, where the traffic sped, a roadside stand that too pathetically pled. It would not be fair to say for a dole of bread, but for some of the money, the cash whose flow supports the flower of cities from sinking and withering faint. Now, in this poem, in the beginning stanza, you can see the little old house was out with a little new shed. He's talking about a roadside stand. Now, you have seen in many of the villages, you have noticed in many of the villages, always there will be a small shop, okay, a small shop extended from the house outward. The people living in the house will be behind, they will be staying behind that shop, and the shop will be extended outside. They will have many things for sale. That is what the poet is trying to explain. The little old house was out with a little new shed. So the little old house, there was a little old house, and there is a small shed also attached together with the house that is out. Now what do you mean by out? Extended. It is extended from the little old house in front at the edge of the road. So this particular roadside stand is situated at the edge of the road, at the margin, at the border of the road, where traffic is passing up and down. In front at the edge of the road, where the traffic sped. Where the traffic sped means vehicles moving at a very fast rate. So a roadside stand, the poet explains in the beginning of the poem that the little old house was out with a little new shed in front at the edge of the road where the traffic sped. So there was an old house, and in front of the old house, it was extended to a small shed at the edge of the road. It was at the edge of the road where the traffic was passing up and down at a great speed. So that is the meaning of sped. A roadside stand, that too pathetically pled. So he says this roadside stand is pleading very sadly for cash. For who are they pleading for cash? From the passers-by. Who are the passers-by? The people who are going at a great speed in their cars. They are just going at a great speed in their cars, and it looks like they are not even noticing those small stands or small shops or sheds that are at the edge of the road, at the side of the road, and it looks very sad. It looks like they are pathetically pleading, pathetically, in a very sad condition, in a very sorrowful condition, they are pleading. So there, what is the poetic device used? Personification. So please underline that particular line and write there, personification. In front at the edge of the house where the traffic sped. This is the line that you must underline. A roadside stand that too pathetically pled. So that particular line, the poetic device used there is personification. It would not be fair to say for a dole of bread. Now here it says, it would not be good of me to say that they are begging for a living. They are not begging for a living. The poet says that it would not be fair to say, that's what he says, it would not be fair to say, it would not be a good thing for me to say that these stands that are situated at the edge of the road are begging of these people for some bread, dole of bread. That's what he means. Dole of bread means for a living. I would not say that they are, begging for a living, but for some of the money, the cash whose flow supports. But they are asking the people passing by in their cars to stop there and buy something from them so that they would have some money with them, an extra money with them. The flowers of city. Now please underline the flowers of city and write, it is also a metaphor. Okay, it's also a comparison. The flowers of city from sinking and withering faint. That means it is saying that they want some cash from these people who are passing by. This cash only supports the city business. The cash that they get, the cash from these rich people are only supporting the city business and prevents it from any business failure. So the business failure it prevents in the cities, not in the rural villages. So that's what he says, the flower of cities. They want some extra cash in their hands. They say that the cities are flourishing. And why are the cities flourishing? It is only because of the cash, the extra cash or the purchases, the things that have been done in the cities by these rich people. Okay, and it says that's the meaning of saying the flower of cities from sinking and withering faint. It means just as flowers are kept from withering with extra care. See, flowers are kept from withering. Withering means drying. Similar to how flowers are kept from drying, similarly, extra cash flows help cities to flourish. So the extra cash that flows to the cities, it helps the cities to flourish. So that is the meaning of that particular stanza. Now I will explain once more the paraphrase of it. The little old house, the roadside stands, existed on the roadside to make a living out of the city money. There is a small roadside stand that is at the edge of the road, and it exists there to make some money from the city money. City money means from the people who are living in the cities. The owners of the roadside stand expected to attract the rich city men by extending the shed closer to the road. Now, why did they extend their shed very close to the road? They extended their shed very close to the road so that the passers-by in their cars would easily notice these small sheds and they would stop there and buy something from them, that they would get some extra money from these people for a better living. The sole expectation of the roadside people is the flow of city money. So the only expectation that they have, the rural people who have these small houses, the small sheds there, the only expectation that they have is some little money from these city people into their hands. But the expectations are never fulfilled, as the city-going people are not kind enough to stop for a while to buy their products. They expect a lot from these city people, but their expectations are not fulfilled. Now, why are the expectations of these people not fulfilled? The expectations are not fulfilled because the city dwellers, they pass through this way, but the small little sheds that stand at the edge of the road are unnoticed by these city dwellers. Hence, the roadside stand has a pathetic condition. So, because of that, the stands of the road, they have a very pathetic condition, a very sad condition. The roadside owners of the shed do not want just bread or the basic amenities of life. That is why it says, the poet says, it would not be fair for me to say that they are begging for a dole of bread. What does he mean by that? It means that the roadside owners of the shed do not want just bread or the basic amenities of life, but they want some alternate income to liberate them from their hand-to-mouth existence. They have not set up these sheds because they want to beg for some bread from the city dwellers. These sheds have been set up only on the expectation that they would be able to make a little cash, not only for the purpose of bread, but also to live a good condition and not be from hand-to-mouth existence. They should not be from hand-to-mouth existence. Now, the next stanza I'm going to read. Now, please look into your books. The polished traffic passed with a mind ahead, or if ever aside a moment, then out of sorts, at having the landscape marred with the artless paint of signs that with N turned wrong and S turned wrong, offered for sale wild berries in wooden quarts or crook-necked golden squash with silver warts, or beauty rest in a beautiful mountain scene. Now, in this particular poem, in this particular stanza, the polished traffic passed. Now here, polished traffic. What is polished traffic? What is the poetic device there? Transferred epithet. So please underline polished traffic and write the poetic device on top, transferred epithet. The polished traffic means the refined people, the rich people, the educated people. That is what the poet means. The polished traffic passed with a mind ahead. Mind ahead means minds restless for greed of money. That is the meaning. These city dwellers, their minds are always restless for the greed of money. That is according to the poet. He says that the city dwellers, they want to expand their business. The only thought is that, how would I make money today? How would I expand my business? So that is what he says by the polished traffic passed with a mind ahead, or if ever aside a moment, then out of sorts. He says, because they feel, or if ever aside a moment, then out of sorts. Out of sorts means uneasy feeling. Even if they notice these sheds, then there is an uneasy feeling in their minds. They do not appreciate it, or they do not do anything for the rural people. They only try to find fault with the rural people at having the landscape marred with the artless paint, because they feel that the landscape is spoiled. What is the meaning of marred? M-A-R-R-E-D. Marred means spoiled. See, they can give you one stanza and they can ask you, find a word from the stanza which means exactly spoiled. Then which word would you select? You must select the word marred. M-A-R-R-E-D. Marred. So he says that these people who pass by, even if they stop for a moment on the roadside, they do not stop to purchase anything or to see anything good. They only stand there to find fault of these poor rural people, that they are marring, they are spoiling the landscape of the place with the artless paint, because of the paint that has been done. Artless paint means not in a proper way, because they are very poor people. They must have not used good paint, or they must not have painted their sheds very decoratively or in a very good way. And that is what it says. Of signs that with N turned wrong and S turned wrong. So he says, and they also find faults that the uneducated owner of the stand, they are uneducated. These people are not very educated. They are uneducated, and being illiterate has erected the board with wrong spelling. They have erected a board there with wrong spelling. That is, S and N are inverted. It's not in the proper way. That is the fault they find. So they find two faults when they pass by. If at all they stop there, they find some faults. What are the faults they find? They find that, the faults that they find is that these roadside stands are spoiling the beauty of the place. They are marring the landscape. They are spoiling the beauty of the place. And not only that, the uneducated people, the illiterate people, they do not even know how to write a signboard properly. Because on the signboard, the word S and the word N are inverted. It has been inverted, turned wrong. Offered for sale. Now underline this. What are the things that are being offered for sale on the roadside stand? See, in the roadside stands, what are the things that are being offered for sale? These are the things. They can ask you, what are the things that are being offered for sale? Now, these are the things that are being offered for sale. Wild berries in wooden quarts. Quarts are containers or boxes. So, wild berries, berries that are wild, they just collect some wild berries that are growing very wild, and they put them in boxes. They are kept there for sale. So, they are selling wild berries in wooden quarts or crooked-necked golden squash. There are some bottles with the necks are crooked. Crooked means not straight. With golden squash, a drink, a kind of a drink that is golden in color, with silver watts, with small silver watts. Or beauty rest in a beautiful mountain scene. Now this is probably, now what does he mean by, but beauty rest in a beautiful mountain scene? Probably the poet is telling us that there is a painting, made by the inhabitants of the roadside stand, meant for selling to the rich people. They may have made a painting and they have kept the painting next to the stand so that the rich people would look at this painting and they would buy it. Now I would explain it to you. The refined people pass that way with a restless mind for greed of money, but they are not kind enough to stop their cars and buy something. Now the refined people, the educated people, the rich people, they pass that way with a restless mind. Why are their mind restless? Because they are only thinking about money. The restless mind for greed of money. But they are not kind enough. These people who are passing by, the city dwellers, they are not kind enough to stop their cars and buy something. And even if they stop for a moment, what do? even if they stop for a moment, they complain that the roadside stand with his artless pain ruined the beauty of nature. So even if they stand there, they complain that these roadside stands, which are so artlessly painted, they are ruining, they are spoiling the beauty of the landscape. That is the complaint they do. And another complaint is that the uneducated people do not even know how to write a proper signboard. The letters S and the letter N are written inverted, are written wrongly written. The articles for sale. Now these are the things that they are keeping for sale. Remember that. What are the articles for sale? The articles for sale are wild berries in wooden containers, crook-necked golden squash with silver warts, and paintings of mountain scenery. And paintings of the mountain scenery which are kept for sale at the roadside stand. Please underline those 3 lines. These are the things that are kept for sale. Once more, I will repeat it. The things that are kept for sale at the roadside stand are wild berries in wooden containers and crooked-necked golden squash with silver warts and paintings of mountain scenery which are kept for sale at the roadside stand. Okay. So this is the explanation of this stanza. Okay, we'll go on to the next stanza. You have the money, but if you want to be mean, why keep your money this crossly? Now this crossly is in brackets. Okay, this crossly and go along. The hurt to the scenery wouldn't be my complaint so much as the trusting sorrow of what is unsaid. Now the poet tells the people, the passers-by, the city dwellers. The poet is talking to the city dwellers and he is telling them that you have the money, but if you want to be mean, he says, you have the money. You have the money to spend. But if you want to be mean, if you want to be selfish, why keep your money? And he's very angry. The poet is a little bit angry, and that is why it is written this crossly. Crossly means angrily. This crossly and go along. And he says, the hurt to the scenery wouldn't be my complaint. Now he says, the passers-by or the people, city dwellers, they are complaining about the scenery that is being spoiled because of the roadside stands that have been erected at the edge of the road. Their complaint is that they are spoiling the landscape, they are spoiling the scenery. But the poet says that I will not, the hurt to the scenery wouldn't be my complaint. I do not complain that they are hurting the scenery or they are spoiling the scenery so much as the trusting sorrow. He says it is the trusting sorrow. Now trusting sorrow is a metaphor. Please underline that and write it as metaphor. He says the trusting sorrow, it means the people who erected these roadside stands, they trust the city dwellers for money. They are trusting them for money, that they would stop their cars and they would buy something from them or they would purchase something from them, that they could make a little profit out of it, which would help their living so that they won't be hand to mouth. So the poet is saying that I do not have any complaints about the scenery as what the city dwellers are saying. Be my complaint. But the only complaint that I have is the trusting sorrow of these people. The people have trusted the city people for some kind of revenue or some kind of income which they are not able to make. And that is my biggest sorrow of what is unsaid. Now, being angry at the indifferent attitude of the so-called, now the poet is very angry at the indifferent attitude of the so-called polished traffic, means the polished people, the refined people. The poet is very angry. The poet asks them to move ahead without noticing the roadside stand. So poet is asking them, if you don't look at the sceneries, don't complain, Don't blame these people. If you do have the money and you do not want to spend, if you have the money and you are very selfish, then don't bother about anything else. You go straight. Why are you stopping? Why are you finding complaints with these people? You don't have to find complaints with the people. In this particular lines, the poet is very, very angry. The poet further regrets the damage caused by the roadside stands as claimed by the city dwellers is not a serious concern. And the poet further is feeling sorry that these city dwellers, instead of helping these people, instead of doing something for these poor rural people, they are simply trying to find some kind of fault, which is not a very serious concern. It's not a very serious thing. But what is serious is the sorrow of the rural people, the trusting sorrow. What is very serious is the sorrow of the rural people, because the fake promises that are made by the city dwellers, the fake promises, okay, the false promises that are made by the city dwellers to buy the products at the roadside shops. That is why they are feeling very sorrow. See, they are feeling very sad, the trusting sorrow. The people of these roadside stands, they trust the city dwellers that they would help them in some sort of way. They would stop their cars, they would purchase something from them so that they would be able to make a small profit to earn their living, for day-to-day living. They would not be from hand to mouth. What do you mean by hand to mouth? Nothing at all. They would have something with them. But the city dwellers, they, instead of helping these people, the poet is very, very angry, and he says, why do you want to find fault with these people? If you do not want to spend your money and you want to be selfish, you move along. You don't bother about these people. You don't have to complain about these people, because the landscape has nothing to do. They have not spoiled the landscape. That's what he says. I feel very sorry, he says, for the rural people for trusting the city dwellers, because it is a trusting sorrow. They trust the city dwellers that they would buy something and they go away without buying anything. They hardly stop to buy, and therefore the economic status of the poor people remain where it is. These people, these polished people, the city dwellers, they hardly stop at this place. And because of that, because of this reason, the economic condition of these city dwellers is always not improving. It is simply becoming down and down. That is what the meaning of trusting sorrow of what is unsaid. Now they will ask you, what does the poet mean by trusting sorrow of what is unsaid? The meaning is that the city dwellers, they passed by without stopping to buy anything from these poor rural people. And because of that, the economic status of the poor people remain where it is. There is no improvement. The poor people depend on these city dwellers, and that is why they have erected these small shops or these small stands at the roadside. But they are deceived of it. The city dwellers do not do anything for the rural people, and that is what they mean by saying the trusting sorrow of what is unsaid. Now I'm going to the next stanza. Here far from the city, we make our roadside stand and ask for city money to feel in hand, to try if it will not make our being expand and give us the life of the moving picture's promise that the party in power is said to be keeping from us. Here far from the city, we make our roadside stand. He says, we don't live in the city. Far from the city, we are making our roadside stand. The village people, see, they are standing, they are making their stands far from the city, and all that they ask is for some little city money, some money from these people to feel in hand. They make their stands far away from their city, and they do not do any kind of nonsense that would hurt the city people. All what they are asking is for a little cash to come into the hand to try if it will not make our being expand. It means that extra flow of cash would improve the financial condition of these people. An extra flow of cash, it would improve the financial condition of these people and give us the life of the moving pictures promise, so that their lifestyle would also be like what is being depicted or what is being showed in the movies. Moving pictures means movies. In the movies, they show a lot of things. These people are so illiterate that they do not know exactly what is right and what is wrong. That they feel that all what they see in the movies are true. So they also want to live a life of comfort. Everything that is shown in the movies. That the party in power means the ruling party, the ruling political party is said to be keeping from us. It means that the ruling political party promises them heaven and earth when they come for their votes. They promise them everything. But once they win or once they get their votes, they forget about these poor people, that they have not done anything for their success. Now I will explain to you. The village people ask for some city cash by buying their products would enable them to make financial progress. So that is the meaning of saying, here far from the city we make our roadside stand and ask for city money to feel in hand. What is the meaning of that? The village people, they make their roadside stands far from the city. And all that they ask for some city cash by buying their products. They do not want free money from these people. They are not begging for money. They are not asking them to give them free. They want them to buy some products from them that would enable them to make financial progress. That is what they want. Then it says, and to try if it will not make our being expand and give us the life of the moving pictures promise. It means the poor villagers have opened the roadside stand with great expectation that their products would bring them some cash and bring about some improvement in their lifestyle as that are being shown in the movies. That is what it means by saying to try if it will not make our being expand. Expand means progress. Some little money that they get from the city dwellers will help them to progress, and it will give them, they also want to live. Their life will improve in their lifestyle and also as what is shown in the movies. The poet further says, now what does the poet further say? That the party in power is said to be keeping from us. Now the poet further says that political parties have not yet provided the lifestyle they have promised to the people of the villages. The political parties, the ruling party, they have promised the villagers heaven and earth. They have promised that they would do so many things for them just for the sake of getting a vote. And they are simply used as vote banks. See, they are used as vote banks and are victims of false promises. That is what they mean. The rest of the lesson, the rest of the poem, I will teach in my next class. So till I come back to you with the rest of the poem, please listen to this video carefully and please subscribe, please share, and please watch this again and again so that you would not forget this lesson completely, because it is a very important poem, and I would come back to you the next day with the rest of the poem. Have a good day. Thank you.